The Galactic Council's vast chamber thrummed with a mechanical hum, its grandeur dwarfed by the stark contrast of Captain Alex Drake's irritation. The walls, lined with holographic displays of cosmic phenomena, flickered with abstract data that seemed to mock their impending doom. Drake stood before the Council's imposing platform, his posture rigid with restrained fury. His eyes, darkened by fatigue and frustration, scanned the alien faces peering down from their high seats. "Captain Drake, your reports are compelling." Admiral Rin's voice dripped with condescension. "Yet they lack empirical evidence. We cannot act on speculative threats." Drake's knuckles whitened around the edge of the lectern. "Empirical evidence? The anomalies we've observed are not speculative. They are real, and they're growing more dangerous by the day." Admiral Rin, a tall, angular figure with a crest of bioluminescent markings that shifted colors, leaned forward. "Humanity's track record does not suggest readiness for such claims. We have our own methods of evaluation." Drake's gaze shifted to Dr. Elena Carter, his lead scientist, who stood beside him. Her face was set in grim determination. She held a small data pad displaying real-time threat assessments, her fingers poised above the screen. "The data on this pad reflects a significant escalation in the threat level," she interjected, her voice steady. "The anomalies are expanding at an unprecedented rate. Ignoring them could jeopardize the entire sector." Council members exchanged glances, their eyes reflecting an unsettling mix of skepticism and boredom. The chamber's atmosphere grew colder, charged with a sense of dismissive finality. Drake felt the weight of their disdain pressing down on him, threatening to suffocate his resolve. "The Council has spoken," Rin said, waving a hand dismissively. "We have no reason to divert resources from our current priorities based on uncertain threats." Drake's face reddened. He clenched his fists, struggling to maintain composure. "You're making a grave mistake. Humanity has developed technology capable of neutralizing this threat. We offer our assistance. Ignoring us won't make it go away." "Captain." Rin's tone was patronizing. "Your offer is noted, but we must prioritize our current strategies." Drake's jaw tightened. He glanced at Carter, who nodded slightly, a silent affirmation of his next move. With a deep breath, Drake stepped back, his mind racing. They had underestimated them, and that would soon become clear. As they exited the Council's chamber, Carter's shoulders sagged with frustration. "We've done everything we could. Now what?" Drake's eyes were fierce, reflecting a mix of determination and resolve. "We'll show them. If they won't listen to our warnings, we'll demonstrate what's coming. Prepare the prototype for the demonstration." Carter's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Exactly," Drake interrupted, his voice steady. "We'll make them see the reality of the threat firsthand." The two exited the chamber, the heavy doors closing behind them with a resonant thud. The corridors of the Council's headquarters felt colder, more sterile, as if the building itself was indifferent to their struggle. Drake and Carter made their way through the labyrinthine halls, their footsteps echoing off the polished floors. In the control room, the hum of machinery was a stark contrast to the tension in the air. Technicians bustled around, preparing the demonstration equipment. Drake took a moment to gaze out of the viewport, watching the vast expanse of space stretch endlessly before him. The cold light of distant stars seemed to illuminate the path ahead, a path fraught with challenges but paved with determination. Drake turned to Carter, his expression resolute. "We'll show them the strength of humanity. We'll demonstrate our power so vividly that they can no longer ignore us." Carter nodded, her earlier frustration replaced with a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's get to work." As they moved towards their preparations, the gravity of their task settled in. They were not just preparing a demonstration, they were setting the stage for humanity's assertion in the galaxy. Their next steps would not only test their technology but also their resolve to be recognized as a significant force in the galaxy. The Council's dismissal was not just an obstacle, it was now the fuel for their determination. The tension that had filled the chamber was now transformed into a burning drive to prove their worth. In the cold expanse of space, as stars glimmered like distant promises, Captain Alex Drake and Dr. Elena Carter prepared to challenge the very fabric of galactic politics, ready to force the Galactic Council to confront the undeniable power of humanity. Captain Alex Drake paced the length of the control room, his mind whirling with thoughts of the impending demonstration. The room, a hive of activity, was filled with the hum of machinery and the clatter of keyboards. Technicians worked furiously to finalize the prototype, a cutting-edge device designed to reveal the threat that the Galactic Council had so blithely dismissed. Dr. Elena Carter, her sleeves rolled up and her face illuminated by the soft glow of her workstation, was deep in concentration. Her fingers danced over the control panel as she made final adjustments. The prototype, a sleek, silver cylinder with an array of glowing sensors, was positioned at the center of the room, its presence commanding attention. "Everything looks good on my end," Carter said, her voice tinged with fatigue but also with a spark of hope. "We're ready to go, but we need to make sure all systems are fully operational." Drake glanced at her, his expression a mix of concern and resolve. "We can't afford any mistakes. If we're going to convince them, it has to be flawless." Carter nodded, wiping a bead of sweat from her forehead. "I understand. I've double-checked the simulations and the field tests. The data should be accurate." As the clock ticked down, the atmosphere in the room grew more charged. The team's focused energy was palpable. Drake took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the viewport that offered a view of the vastness of space. He could see the silhouette of their ship against the backdrop of stars, a stark reminder of the enormity of their task. The doors slid open with a hiss, and Admiral Rin, flanked by two aides, entered the room. Rin's eyes swept over the setup with a critical gaze. "We've received your request for a demonstration. I'm here to oversee the proceedings." Drake turned to face the Admiral, his voice steady but carrying an edge. "Thank you for coming, Admiral. We'll begin shortly." Rin's gaze lingered on the prototype, his expression unreadable. "I trust this won't be another exercise in futility?" Drake's eyes narrowed. "This will be a demonstration of humanity's technological capabilities and the seriousness of the threat we're facing." Rin's eyes flickered with skepticism, but he remained silent as he took a position behind a monitoring station. Carter finished her final checks and approached Drake, her face a mask of determination. "We're ready, Captain." Drake nodded, then turned to Rin. "We'll start the demonstration now. Please observe closely." The room fell into a tense silence as Carter activated the prototype. The cylinder's sensors flared to life, casting a cool, bluish light across the room. A holographic projection sprang up, displaying an intricate simulation of the galactic anomalies, swirling distortions and pulsating energy waves. Rin leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he examined the display. The simulation showed the anomalies expanding at an alarming rate, their energy signatures growing increasingly erratic. Drake's voice cut through the silence, firm and commanding. "These anomalies are not just theoretical. They are a real and growing threat. If left unchecked, they could destabilize entire star systems." Rin's expression hardened. "I see the data, but how do you propose to handle this?" Drake's gaze was unyielding. "Our technology can neutralize the anomalies. We've developed a method to contain and stabilize them, but we need the Council's support to implement it on a larger scale." The room was filled with the low hum of machinery and the occasional beep from monitoring equipment. Carter adjusted the parameters on her console, ensuring the simulation remained accurate. The projection shifted, showing the prototype's effect on the anomalies, how it could theoretically reverse their expansion. Rin's eyes widened slightly, his skepticism momentarily giving way to surprise. "Impressive. But theory and practice are different. Can you demonstrate its effectiveness in a real-world scenario?" Drake's lips curled into a determined smile. "We're prepared to show you its effectiveness, but we need immediate authorization to deploy the technology on a test site. Time is of the essence." The Admiral's gaze flickered to the simulation and then back to Drake. The tension in the room was palpable, the stakes high. Rin's expression was inscrutable as he considered Drake's request. Carter's voice broke the silence. "We're on a tight timeline. Every moment we delay could make the difference between containment and catastrophe. Rin's eyes met Drake's, a flicker of grudging respect in his gaze. Very well. I'll confer with the Council. We'll see if your demonstration warrants further action. As Rin and his aides left the room, Drake and Carter exchanged a look of cautious optimism. The demonstration had gone as planned, but the real challenge lay ahead. The fate of their mission, and potentially, the galaxy, depended on the Council's response. Drake took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the prototype. The demonstration was just the beginning. The real test would be convincing the Council to act before it was too late. The clock continued to tick, each second a reminder of the urgency that drove them. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but Captain Drake and Dr. Carter were resolute. They had made their case, and now, it was time to await the Council's decision, and brace for the next phase of their mission. The sterile corridor outside the Council chambers felt oppressive as Captain Alex Drake and Dr. Elena Carter waited for Admiral Rin's return. The air was heavy with anticipation, each second stretching into what felt like an eternity. Drake's hands were clasped behind his back, his posture rigid with a mix of anxiety and resolve. Carter's eyes darted between the door and the viewport, her face pale with worry. The hum of machinery and distant voices echoed faintly down the hall, a stark reminder of the galaxy's vastness and the stakes they faced. Drake's gaze was fixed on the viewport, where distant stars glimmered like cold promises. He could almost feel the pressure of time slipping away. "Captain, do you think they'll agree?" Carter's voice cut through the silence, a tremor of uncertainty in her tone. Drake turned to her, his expression a blend of determination and fatigue. "They have to. The data we presented was irrefutable. If they don't act now, it could be catastrophic." The door to the Council chambers slid open with a soft hiss, and Admiral Rin emerged, his expression inscrutable. "The Council has reviewed your demonstration," he said, his voice carrying an undertone of gravity. "They are willing to authorize a limited field test, but only under strict conditions." Drake's heart raced. "What kind of conditions?" Rin's eyes narrowed. "You will be allowed to deploy the prototype on a remote planet, but you must return and report within 24 hours. Any deviation from protocol or failure to achieve results will result in immediate cessation of the project." Drake nodded, his face steely. "Understood. We'll comply with the conditions." Rin's gaze lingered on Carter. "You're responsible for the prototype's deployment and operation. Ensure that all systems function correctly. The Council is not inclined to grant additional chances." As Rin walked away, Carter let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "One chance, Captain? We need to make it count." Drake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will. Let's get to the launch bay." The launch bay was a cavernous space, filled with the roar of engines and the scent of ionized air. The prototype was secured in a shuttle, ready for deployment. Technicians bustled around, performing final checks. Carter and Drake moved with purpose, their determination evident in every step. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a metallic clang. Carter took her seat at the control station, her fingers flying over the controls as she initiated the pre-launch sequence. Drake watched from the doorway, his eyes reflecting the harsh lights of the bay. "Everything's on schedule," Carter reported, her voice steady despite the tension. "We'll be ready to launch in 5 minutes." Drake nodded. "Good. Make sure the prototype is calibrated correctly. We can't afford any errors." Carter's eyes met his, and she gave a determined nod. "I've double-checked everything. We're ready." The shuttle's engines roared to life, shaking the bay as it prepared for takeoff. Drake settled into the seat next to Carter, his gaze fixed on the viewport as the bay doors opened, revealing the vast expanse of space. The stars seemed to blink with an indifferent majesty as the shuttle moved out into the void. As they approached the designated planet, a barren, rocky world with swirling dust storms, Drake and Carter exchanged a look of steely resolve. The planet's surface, a harsh expanse of brown and gray, looked uninviting, but it was their stage for the coming test. The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud, its landing gear stabilizing on the rocky terrain. Carter initiated the deployment sequence, and the prototype was lowered onto the planet's surface. The device began to hum, its sensors activating as it started to scan the surrounding area. Drake watched the readouts on the control panel, his heart pounding as the prototype began its work. The energy signatures on the display were erratic, but they were starting to stabilize. Carter's face was illuminated by the soft glow of the screen, her focus absolute. "We're getting results," Carter said, her voice tinged with a mix of relief and excitement. "The prototype is working. The anomalies are starting to stabilize." Drake nodded, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Keep monitoring. We need to ensure the results are consistent and effective." The shuttle's communication system crackled to life. "Captain, Dr. Carter, this is the control room. We're receiving irregular data from your feed. Are you experiencing any issues?" Drake's eyes widened as he glanced at the readouts. The energy patterns on the screen were beginning to fluctuate wildly, the anomalies exhibiting unpredictable behavior. "We're seeing anomalies in the data," Drake responded. "It's not what we expected. Can you confirm?" The static-laden response crackled through the speaker. "Affirmative. We're seeing the same irregularities. It's possible that the anomalies are more complex than anticipated." Drake's jaw tightened. "We need to adjust the prototype's parameters immediately. Carter, recalibrate the device." Carter's fingers flew over the controls as she worked to correct the issue. The tension in the shuttle was palpable, the sense of urgency heightened by the unexpected complications. The prototype's hum grew louder, its sensors working overtime to stabilize the anomalies. Drake's gaze was fixed on the display, his mind racing with the implications of the new data. They were facing an unprecedented challenge, and the success of their mission hinged on their ability to adapt quickly. As the prototype began to stabilize the anomalies once more, the comms crackled again. "Captain, we're receiving an urgent transmission from the Council. They're demanding an immediate update on your progress." Drake's heart raced. The stakes had just been raised. They had to prove the prototype's effectiveness and justify their mission or risk losing everything they had worked for. Drake and Carter exchanged a determined glance, their resolve unshaken. They had come this far, and they would see it through to the end. The demonstration was far from over, and the real test was only beginning. The rocky planet's surface was a harsh and unforgiving landscape, illuminated only by the dim, flickering lights of the prototype. The shuttle's interior was tense, the hum of machinery a constant reminder of the stakes at hand. Captain Alex Drake and Dr. Elena Carter were deep in concentration as the prototype continued its work. The anomalies, once showing signs of stabilization, were now exhibiting erratic behavior. Drake stood over Carter's shoulder, his brow furrowed as he watched the fluctuating readouts. The holographic display showed energy surges and distortions that defied their initial predictions. The tension was palpable, the air heavy with the scent of ionized air and the hum of the shuttle's systems working overtime. "What's happening?" Drake's voice was a low growl of frustration. "Why are the anomalies becoming unstable again?" Carter's fingers danced across the control panel as she attempted to recalibrate the prototype. "I'm not sure. The data we're receiving is inconsistent. It's possible the anomalies are interacting with each other in ways we didn't anticipate." The comms crackled, and a voice came through, strained and urgent. "Captain, Dr. Carter, this is Command. We're detecting a significant increase in anomaly activity. You need to provide an update immediately." Drake exchanged a worried glance with Carter. "We're seeing the same thing. We need to stabilize the prototype's output, or we risk losing control of the anomalies." Carter nodded, her face set in determination. "I'm adjusting the parameters, but we may need to implement emergency protocols if this doesn't work." The prototype's lights blinked erratically, casting strange shadows across the shuttle's walls. Drake's mind raced through the possible scenarios. If they failed to stabilize the anomalies, not only would their mission be jeopardized, but the consequences could be disastrous for nearby star systems. Suddenly, the prototype emitted a high-pitched whine, and the display flickered violently. Carter's hands flew over the controls, desperately trying to regain control. The anomalies on the screen seemed to pulse and writhe, their energy signatures growing more chaotic. Drake's heart pounded as he leaned closer to the display. Carter, if this keeps up, we'll have a full-blown crisis on our hands. What's the next step? Carter's eyes were wide with concentration. I'm initiating emergency containment protocols. We need to isolate the anomalies and prevent them from spreading. The shuttle shook violently, the turbulence a physical manifestation of the chaos unfolding outside. Drake gripped the armrest, his jaw clenched as he fought to keep his composure. The prototype's containment field was expanding, a shimmering barrier designed to isolate the anomalies. The comms crackled again, this time with an even more urgent tone. Captain, Dr. Carter, we're receiving reports of anomalies appearing near inhabited systems. You need to resolve this now or face severe repercussions. Drake's blood ran cold at the news. The pressure was on, and failure was not an option. He turned to Carter, his voice firm. We need to stabilize this containment field and neutralize the anomalies before they spread any further. Carter's fingers flew over the console, her face a mask of fierce determination. Almost there. The containment field is stabilizing, but we need to maintain it long enough to fully neutralize the anomalies. The prototype's energy output surged, the containment field glowing a brilliant blue as it sealed the anomalies within a defined area. The chaotic fluctuations began to subside, and the display showed the energy signatures slowly returning to normal. Drake's tension eased slightly, but he remained on edge. How long until we can safely retract the containment field? Carter glanced at the readouts, her expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. We need at least another hour to ensure the anomalies are fully neutralized. If we retract the field too soon, we risk a resurgence. Drake nodded, his gaze focused on the display. We'll hold the containment until then. Keep me updated on any changes. As the minutes ticked by, the prototype continued to stabilize the anomalies. The shuttle's interior was filled with the quiet hum of the machinery working its magic. Drake and Carter worked in silence, their focus unwavering. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Carter reported. Containment field is stable. The anomalies are neutralized. We've contained the threat. Drake let out a slow breath, his shoulders relaxing as he absorbed the news. Good work, Carter. Let's prepare for extraction and report our findings to command. As they prepared to leave the planet's surface, Drake glanced out at the desolate landscape, a stark reminder of the close call they had just survived. The mission had been successful, but the tension of the past hours left a lingering edge. They had faced the threat head-on and emerged victorious, but the stakes were clear. The galaxy was on the brink, and their efforts were only the beginning of a much larger struggle. As the shuttle lifted off and the rocky terrain receded beneath them, Drake and Carter knew that their next steps would be crucial. They had proven their technology's effectiveness, but now they needed to rally support and prepare for the challenges ahead. The fate of many depended on their continued resolve and determination. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. I promise you, nothing will happen to your finger.